Hi, my name is Alex Dolphin, and welcome back to another episode of Ex Ante. Today we're going to discuss the case Girouard v. State. This case was heard in the Maryland Court of Appeals in the year 1991. Let's go ahead and jump into the facts of the case. So this is a criminal one. It's pretty graphic, pretty obscene, so just a FYI, a disclaimer before we jump into it. Stephen and Joyce Girouard were both members of the military. They met each other while they were in the military, and they got married after knowing each other for just about 3 months. So very quick marriage. Joyce wasn't very satisfied in the marriage early on, and she began to kind of express that to her husband. She expressed it to her friends as well. While she was on a phone call with her friend, her husband came in and heard that she was basically over the marriage. They got into a bit of an altercation. Where Joyce began, she pulled the hair of her husband and said, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? I don't love you anymore. I don't love you anymore. We're getting divorced. Our marriage is over. And basically is just verbally attacking him. Stephen Girouard eventually just gets so frustrated, so heated, that he gets himself into a fit of rage. He grabs a knife and he stabs his wife Joyce 19 times. And tragically, she dies. So he feels bad about this immediately afterwards. So we know this isn't, premeditated. He wasn't planning on killing his wife. This was a heat of the moment type of thing. And afterwards, to just show, so we can see that he does feel bad, he slits his wrist, basically tries to kill himself. But he realizes he's not going to die from his self-inflicted wounds. So he turns himself into the police. And now the prosecutor charges him with second-degree murder, and the trial court convicts him of that. Now, Stephen wants to use the Provocation Doctrine to argue that his second-degree murder charge should be lessened to a manslaughter charge. So what's the Provocation Doctrine? That is the key legal doctrine to glean from this case. What that is that if someone provokes you in a way that it inflames the passion of a reasonable man, then if you murder someone because of that provocation, that murder might be decreased to a manslaughter charge. Now, there's a couple scenarios that the court recognizes where it says, that provocation is enough to warrant a what would traditionally be a murder to be decreased to a manslaughter. Now, the two scenarios really that they recognize are assault and battery or mutual combat. So, just a fight. Then the other one is if a man walks in on his wife committing adultery with another man, and he kills that man or that woman, well, that would not be murder, it would just be manslaughter. He was provoked. He was put into a fit of rage by seeing his wife commit adultery. And that's kind of sexist, and it's interesting to see that doesn't really apply the other way, and we can talk about that later, but just take that at face value. Now, the court is left with a situation where they have to decide, should we extend this Provocation Doctrine to the present fact scenario where Joyce really just provoked Stephen with her words. She was significantly smaller than Stephen. Stephen was 6'2", well over 200 pounds, and she was much shorter, a small woman in stature. She couldn't have really done anything to threaten him or, put him in any harm's way. But she did provoke him, needlessly, the court recognizes, with her words. She kept taunting him verbally. So is that verbal taunting enough to warrant the Provocation Doctrine to be invoked here to save the defendant from his second-degree murder charge and downgrade that to a manslaughter charge? And the court ultimately says no. These words alone are not enough to invoke the Provocation Doctrine. Now, they say words can be enough if they're accompanied by, a real threat, by a person who could cause a real threat to you. Now, the fact is, Joyce was not a real threat to Stephen. Maybe if she had a knife, maybe if she had a gun, but she didn't. She just had her bare hands and she pulled his hair. It wasn't enough to put him in, fear or to really truly provoke or inflame the passions of a reasonable man. So you can see we introduce an objective standard, inflame the passions of a reasonable man. And they say that Stephen acted unreasonably when he responded by stabbing his wife 19 times. So the court declines to extend the Provocation Doctrine to words alone. They say that is not adequate provocation to invoke the doctrine. So that's pretty much the case. it's interesting to think about the provocation doctrine in fringe scenarios like this one. It is a fringe scenario. And I think if the provocation doctrine would have saved Stephen, we probably all would have been kind of angry about this. But there are scenarios where the provocation doctrine does make sense. Let's just put aside the catching your spouse in adultery for a second, and let's just talk about a fight, where two people get into a street fight with one another and the passions get inflamed. They're both in this fight and someone gets killed. Should that person be convicted of second-degree murder, or should that person be convicted of manslaughter? If someone comes up to you and pushes you and starts to fight with you on the street and you fight back and then they die, should you really be prosecuted for second-degree murder? Should you be convicted of that? Or should it just be a lesser manslaughter? There's no... you have to, kind of think that maybe there's levels of moral culpability here, and someone who clearly intends to murder someone versus someone who just gets into a heat of passion and then kills someone in that heat of passion, are they morally culpable on the same level? And I think there's an argument to be made that they are. We don't want people that just get inflamed going around and killing people and getting off with it, or getting lesser charges because of the provocation doctrine. But at the same time, fights happen, accidents happen, and you have to just distinguish between those two. And it is an interesting thing to think about, because maybe there is no difference between the blameworthiness of someone who kills someone in a street fight and then someone who just comes up to someone and stabs them in the back. But I think intuitively you feel that there's different levels of moral culpability. So anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see more, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye-bye.